What is good, YouTube? Quinn Wade basketball analysis coming to y'all with a quick video. We're going to talk about the Norman Powell trade that happened earlier today. I think this trade needed to happen. One, Portland, they have a lot of money tied up to this team that, one, you don't know when Damian Lillard is going to come back. Obviously, this team came into the season knowing that this could be a rebuilding year where Dame could leave anytime he wanted to, and nobody expected Dame to possibly have his worst season of his career since he's been the guy. And this is going to be, like I said before, possibly the first season that Dame would miss the playoffs in Portland since he's been there. And right now, they're not even in the playoff playing conversation, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. But the fact that CJ missed time, Dame missed a significant time, and even when he was healthy, he wasn't that great. And then you look at the fact that this team was going nowhere. Like at best, this team was in the play-in conversation / seventh to eighth seed, and that's where they've been around. And in the last couple seasons, even at they peaked, they made it to the conference finals, but they got swept. And obviously, they missed the first round. I mean, they got put out in the first round ever since then, and before. So when you look at this team, even with Chauncey Billups, it didn't change much. The personnel, obviously, coming into this season didn't change much either, which I thought was a problem. I thought we did have to give Chauncey Billups a shot to see can he change the culture, what can he really do, because coaching changes do help. Sometimes, a coach can really make you play different, play a better style for the players that you have on your roster compared to the other coach, because obviously you have a new coaching staff and you have, a different type of personnel, but their biggest problem is they didn't have enough elite talent. Damian Lillard is getting older. CJ, has been injury prone throughout his career, and he had a little bit of injury last year too, and even this year he's been injured. And you kind of look at it like, would that be enough when you look at the fact that the GMs even got fired? So you already knew that this season was already a disaster. And then on top of that, you look at the fact that Damian Lillard said, I want Ben Simmons. And then he never got Ben Simmons. And next thing you know, Powell is gone in Covington. So I think that it makes sense to get rid of him. I'm kind of like, this is a win-win deal. I don't really look at it like the fact that Portland didn't get much talent is why they lost. When you look at the contracts that they got, and you look at the fact that people look at, well, they got Eric Bledsoe, his contract is expiring. So if you're going to go in a different direction, you don't want to keep guys on your book, especially a guy like Powell who just got an extension. Him and CJ are similar type of players, and they both are undersized, to play the three. And they both are not great defenders, so with Dame. So it was already kind of crazy to trade for Powell, especially if you was going to start him. And now you got a bad, backcourt, and then you add another bad defender. Yeah, he give you another guy that can score and handle the ball, but he's undersized for the three and he doesn't defend, and he's not the greatest spot-up three-point shooter either. So I always thought that was always a problem, especially when you look at the fact that Robert Covington is a guy that can play the three or the four, but he's a solid defender at best and not the greatest three-point shooter, and he doesn't really do much else outside of just being solid defensively and can hit some threes. And that was one of their problems. They put some good support players around Dame, but it just wasn't enough. Even with the Robert Covington trade and a Powell trade, they still been a first-round exit team, even after those acquisitions. Those were supposed to be the moves to add more talent around Dame and CJ and give them a better chance, and they had the same result even with them. And you look at the fact that Portland lost, with this team, more healthier than the Nuggets, and they still beat them last year without, a healthy Porter or Jamal Murray. And the Nuggets were still able to beat them without even going to 7 games. So it's kind of crazy to see, the fact that they realized that this Dame and CJ thing just wasn't going to work. I always figured that it wasn't, the fact that they went to the Western Conference Finals. A lot of people looked at that as a sign that it could work, and it was. But like I said, the problem with that was they did get swept and never went back. And the fact that they kind of retracted every year. One season, they even, the bubble season, they had to fight, through the play-in just to become an eighth seed, just to get put out by the Lakers. And it just been a fight just to be a playoff team ever since then. And even when they was last year, they still got put out in the first round. So this team has been really going nowhere. This team hasn't really made a huge run. They haven't even won a game in the conference finals and only been there once their entire time being a duo. And it did make you question, like, what can you do? And I feel like that was really a fair assessment. You know, when you tried this Dame, CJ, and Terry Stotts with Yusuf Nurkic, and then you changed with Powell and Covington, and then you try to bring in Simons and get a better bench, and you still get it put out in the first round. It do make you wonder, what can you do? And maybe it is just blow it up as, you know, your best players only getting older. They're getting more injuries. They're wearing down because you play them a lot of minutes, you rely on them a lot. And the fact that that doesn't go well with age, and the fact that they haven't really done a lot, you know, successfully as a duo, and the fact that, you know, Terry Stotts and a lot of these guys are gone. So once they tried the coaching change and they didn't change much of the personnel, and even when they wanted a guy like Ben Simmons to come in, they never made that move. It kind of signaled that eventually, especially when the GM got fired this year, that they should just blow it up. And I feel like they should have been did it, but I understand that you want to try all options before you give up. You want to try all options but before you quit. But, you know, it makes sense, you know, with Dame getting toe up and CJ getting toe up and the coaching change and not making that much of a difference. And the fact that this team is just one of the highest paid salary teams in the NBA, and they're struggling to make the playoffs even this season. And even if they do, they're probably going to be a first round exit like majority of the season that Dame and CJ and these guys been together. It is, you know, a legitimate, you know, reason to blow it up. And I do feel like they should trade Dame. You know, if you're going to trade Powell and you're going to trade Covington, and you obviously got worse when it comes to talent in this trade, you know, it is best to try to blow it up. You might not have to blow it up, you know, this trade deadline and rush and make a deal, but definitely this summer, especially because Dame is going to be eligible, you know, to be in that contract extension range next season. So you definitely don't want to keep him around if you're planning on going a different direction. So a lot of people, like I said, look at this as a fleece or nothing, but I don't really look at it like that. I just feel like Portland had to clear the salary. You know, they can't afford to keep this team together if they're going to be an 8th, 7th seed or a play-in team, and that's it. Especially when you're going to pay Dame another $30 to $40 million, and CJ, you already paying him $30 million, and his contract is going to get ready to come up, and you got to decide what you're going to do with a team that hasn't really, you know, came close to winning you a title or even been to a finals. And that's not really a sign of success when you're trying to build, you know, a championship culture and you couldn't even get to the finals once or even close to it. Because like I said, when you got to the conference finals, they got swept. They didn't even win the game then. So I like this trade. This is a trade where Keon Johnson, like I said in the draft, he has a lot of potential. Like I said, he is a guy that has size, has potential to be a two-way player, has potential to be a guy that can score in a variety of ways. But clearly that'd be years from now, so he's not going to be able to do that right now. And you got to look at the fact that Anthony Simons is a guy that showed that he can produce. And he's going to be in a contract year, which is this year. So they got to figure out what they're going to do with him in his future, especially since he had, you know, a spark since Dame and then went down. And then you look at the fact that, you know, Powell and Covington isn't that young either. And they haven't been the greatest fits around Dame and CJ as pieces, and they haven't really had success with pieces. I mean, with themselves around Dame and CJ, and regardless of the coaches and players they had around them. So it was time for them to wake up and realize that this team wasn't going nowhere. They really wasn't accomplishing the goals that they thought they accomplished, no matter who they put around this duo. And now it's just time to go in a different direction. I still think that they should try to find the best trade out there for CJ. Try to get, you know, the best picks and pieces you can back. I think the same thing with Dame. Get the biggest haul you can get for Dame. Obviously, he's not what he was before because he had surgery now. He didn't play that well this season since the rule changed. But he still is an all-star caliber player when healthy, and he's going to give you some value back. He's going to get you the most value back out of all players. But when you look at the Clippers, I feel like this is a good move. Obviously, Bledsoe hasn't worked that well this year. For them, I didn't think he was going to be a great addition. Bledsoe hasn't been a great significant player. in a couple seasons, especially because he doesn't play well in the playoffs, which is what you need the most when you're trying to win a championship with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. The biggest problem with the Clippers is you just don't know when Paul George and Kawhi Leonard is going to play, as we don't know when Paul George is going to come back. We don't have no timetable when Kawhi Leonard is going to come back. And the fact that they still have a championship coach, they still have a roster that can compete with anybody, especially if Kawhi Leonard is a Kawhi Leonard of old, which he might not be because he's going to take some time for him to get back, to form, which is why they can probably make a run next year. So I feel like Covington is going to be great for them because he's not a guy that does much. He's more of a Morris type of guy where he can play some solid defense, give you some versatility, can play multiple positions, can defend multiple positions, and can hit the open shot when it's there. Powell can break down defenses, give you some ball handling, give you some scoring, give you some decent spot up shooting, and he's also a guy that can play off Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and create shots when they can hit threes and mid ranges and get out in transition too. So he fits, better to me with the Clippers than he did with Portland because Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are solid defenders and they guys that can really impact the ball, whether they're handling the ball or playing off of it, and they actually have size. That's the problem with Dame and CJ. They don't really defend and they're undersized, when it comes to the playoff teams that you have to beat. And Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are opposite. They had struggles with some of the best teams, but, this team was just in the conference finals last year and they didn't even have Kawhi Leonard to beat Utah. So it just show you how dangerous they can be if they're healthy, especially when they add guys like Covington and Powell for, getting rid of Justice Winslow, who isn't a great scorer or a shooter, and you get to replace them with guys that can shoot the ball, score the ball, and play well, with other guys that are veterans. Like a lot of these players on this team understand their game, understand their role, and understand how to contribute. And then they already know how to play off Paul George and Kawhi Leonard because a lot of this team is the same. This team has been the same for the 2 years, for the most part, last year and this season. And even if they change a little bit, it won't be drastically unless another big trade is made. But Kawhi Leonard is this team. They're a championship team if Kawhi Leonard is healthy. Obviously, without Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, they still have solidified themselves as a team that can be, competitive. And they have still remained in a playoff spot even with and without Paul George so far. So all I can tell you is the Clippers are one of them teams that a lot of people respect. People know how dangerous they can be. People know what they're capable of when healthy. Obviously, that hasn't been the case. But, if they get their guys back, they're a dangerous team. And they're a team you got to watch out for. But like I say, I don't believe Kawhi will be the same Kawhi Leonard when he comes back. But, he has to play his way in. He has to, get his feel back, get his touch back, get some games under his belt. And, just get used to that surgically repaired knee or whatever happened to it. We don't know too much about it, that's why I said that. And I feel like they have to be competitive. So, I always tell you before I end the video, either you got to make moves to get better or you get worse. Because teams consistently get better, teams consistently make moves. As we've seen the last couple of years, because the Clippers was obviously 1 and 2. It was them and the Lakers, and then teams kept making moves, and the Clippers just stayed the same or got worse. Just like this year, they brought a lot of the team back, but Kawhi Leonard didn't play because he was injured, and Paul George got injured. And they was just a team that we knew would be respectable, but we knew they wouldn't be one of the greatest teams, especially because we knew that Kawhi Leonard most likely wouldn't play this season, and we didn't know how he was going to play when he came back. But, you still got to give them respect because they did improve. Getting rid of Bledsoe and Winslow, non-shooters, fittable players around their stars are now gone. And then Keon Johnson, obviously he's not going to be a part of what they're trying to do now because he's more of a future guy that's going to be better in the future 3, 4, 5 years from now than being a guy that can contribute and help you win currently. But I knew he was more of a guy that they'll trade for a veteran because most teams are trying to win a championship now, like the Clippers. They're not really worried about building up a guy, developing a guy when they can get a guy that can help them win now. So I'm not really surprised that they package some of these guys together to get other guys that can make them better. So I don't really think none of us are surprised that the Clippers made a move like this. They probably didn't think like a move like this will be available, but we still have to see, what this team can do healthy. Obviously, I think they got better talent-wise. I think Portland, like I said, won this trade too because they got rid of a lot of players and a lot of contracts that they had to get off of. And they got contracts like Bledsoe, like I said, that is aspiring. And on top of that, Keon Johnson is on a rookie contract. And Justice Winslow is on a one-year deal too that's waivable. So they can get out of that contract. And they got a pick on top of that. So they cleared a lot of salary and they have flexibility, in this offseason to, either keep the salary or, try to sign some other people that can fit better to what they're trying to do. Take some risks, take some gambles on some people, and allow them to absorb contracts because they have salary cap to take on other players that other teams don't want, and get more picks that way. We've seen teams like Boston take on bad contracts because they had the salary cap and they was rebuilding to get more picks so they can get more younger players with the picks, and the contract eventually expires or they trade it for more picks like we see with OKC, and then you have more picks that you can use to build a potential championship team in the future. And if Portland wants to rebuild, if you can get more cap, you can get more picks and turn more players into more picks. That helps you have a better future of having more chances and swinging at a bat to, get a star and build around that star and hopefully can win a title, which they try to do this generation, just didn't happen. And all you can do is try to do it again and try again and rebuild and try to do it better than you did before, especially because they got a new GM and front office now since they fired a lot of them this year, and see what you can do, this decade and the next one. So Portland fans, y'all journey is coming to end with Dame, it looks like, and it was going to happen eventually. Either he's going to stay or he's going to go. But, Dame hasn't played that well. This team hasn't been that great. And, this duo hasn't been the greatest together. So I was one of the guys that always said they should break this up. And hopefully it doesn't. I don't know if they're going to trade him now. I don't know if they're going to trade him before the end of the deadline. I don't know if they're going to trade him in off season. But you don't want to be paying guys $30-40 million that can't get you far. And that's what they've been doing with this Portland team. And they haven't really got much nowhere with this roster or this duo together. So with that being said, I definitely think with the coach being fired, the GM getting fired, and Dame and CJ not playing their greatest basketball, it should be more of an incentive to get rid of them and go in a different direction. Now we just got to see what direction will it be, what they're going to get in return for these guys if they do trade them, and then we can start seeing what Portland, can start doing in the future with this roster and this organization as they try to move forward from the Damian Lillard era, which was fun and exciting, had some great moments, but ultimately, it's going to come to an end. Whether, they trade him or he demands a trade or he just don't sign his extension and just become a free agent and leave to another team, which is still possible, So we'll see. Other than that, Quinn Way Basketball Analysis signing out. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of y'all day. See y'all tomorrow. Good night.